Welcome to Armchair Author Chats. Today we are going to be talking to David Wilson, an amazing prolific author. I mean, so many titles, I don't even know where to start. My goodness, he's got an amazing backlist, and we're going to get to talking to that right now. Here we go. Let's bring him on in. Hi, David. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much. The Devil's Final Offer has intrigued me so much. I've been thinking about it all week, by the way, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let's start with some magic. Can you share the moment you first felt that spark to get your first book written?
Yeah, sure. My first book would have been my memoir of my time in law enforcement. And I was actually writing it as a diary to myself. And I was having such a good time with it. And I ended up with an encyclopedia of just information that about 7 years after I started it, I thought, wow, maybe somebody would like to read this. Maybe there's an audience for this. And not because it was about me, but because it was about being an officer in a very rural state
Yeah.
um, in New England. And maybe somebody would like to read, what is it really like to be an officer? Because I was just a typical officer. Other than I did a few other things. I went into drug enforcement and those type of things. And it was when an editor publisher said, yes, we would like to have your book. And it might have been even a little bit before that because I had spoken to a local editor who gave me some great suggestions because I wasn't a writer. This isn't something that I grew up doing or aspired to do.
It found
Uh, and,
you.
I, and they found me, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I appreciated the information that this person was giving me on how to make my work better. But even more than that, they were saying that it was interesting enough for somebody else to read. So when I did, I took all that information, that great information, and I, basically rewrote the book, making it better based on their suggestions. But it was when somebody said, yes, we want this. We think that there's an audience for this. That was my aha moment.
Oh, wow. And it's amazing. It's the Peanut Butter Memoirs.
Yes, that's the
Yes.
title of
It's fun. I love it. I love it. It was one of the ones I went, oh, well, that looks good. Mad respect for law enforcement too over here. So you got me hooked. So
it.
can you give us a peek behind the curtain now that you are a writer and it found you and you have the bug and it's once it bites, it doesn't let go. Am I right?
Yep, you are so right about that.
So give us a peek behind the curtain. What does your writing routine typically look like?
I When I have an idea, I've got to do a storyboard. I may not start writing, but just like the movie directors do, I've got to, there's notes all over my desk. I've got to get that note down so that I can work on it and make something of it later. And typically, because I'm a multi-genre author now, typically I'll be working on more than one project at once. So I may be working on, one of my psychological thriller novels, and then all of a sudden something pops into my mind that says, hey, my humor novels, that character needs that to happen. And I have to switch gears. And I may just, get away from what I'm working on for hours or even days at a time to develop that idea until I have that to the point where I'm happy with it. And then I go back to my other project. But I also like doing that. I enjoy the diversity of that because
Yeah.
it keeps it from being boring.
Right, it does keep it interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
So there's no, do you get up in the morning or do you write in the evening? What do you
I
prefer?
typically Yeah, I am an early morning person, and so I do a lot. Some of us are, some of us aren't.
Yeah.
Um, I, and it's funny because I was listening to your last interview, and I saw a lot of similarities. I don't work in the evenings. That's my wife and I's time, and I try not to do it on the weekends just because there's so many other things going around, and I really want to focus when I have an idea.
Right.
Um, so it's during the day, it's daytime writing that I do it, and I will, sometimes it's hard to stop yourself, but I will stop myself at a certain point during the day and say, okay, we'll get back to this tomorrow.
Yeah, sometimes you have to. We can be locked in our holes for weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, can you share any funny or unusual stories that happened while you were writing or promoting your books?
Sure. And I'm going to go to my humor series. I have a humor series that's based in New England.
Hmm.
It's fiction. It's and a lot of the very first book. I'm up to my third book because there is a following for the primary character, and she's a mean old woman. She's very funny, and,
Oh,
and
she's
and she's a New
snarky.
Englander.
She
She's
sounds.
snarky. She's got the attitude. And the way that book started was my father was a storyteller, and I wanted to document the stories that he told me about his life. And I also wanted to document some of the adventures that we had together. But I wanted to do it in a fictional novel with many characters, with the one being one primary character. So in the first book, a lot of the stories are based on truth, and my editor is my wife on that book.
Oh, wow.
Whenever I get a chapter done, she has to read it and let me know if it's good or not.
I
And,
love
and of
it.
course, being familiar with the stories of my dad, she's very good at letting me know that the story is flowing the way it should be flowing. But in the second book, it turned more into fiction because by the time the first book was done, I had documented all of those stories, but I wanted to continue to develop the characters.
Right.
So the second book was almost entirely fictional except for one chapter. And my wife was editing that chapter one day and she said to me, "This chapter is about me, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it is."
Uh-oh.
She caught me. She
My
caught
feet
me.
right away.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very funny story, and she loved it. I mean, she got a big kick out of it, but she immediately recognized herself as that primary character.
Oh, I
So it was
love
it
that. Were
was
you a
good.
little scared at first?
I wanted to put that story in the first book, and I didn't. But I said no. I've got to put it in the second book, and I
Maybe
did.
it's good you waited it out a little bit.
Right, right. It was about a very funny incident that happened to both of us, and she saw the humor in it, and I was very glad that she did.
Whew, yeah. Good husband. Good husband. Writing isn't always easy. So, how do you push through writer's block or the tough days?
We all have them as writers. There's those times where you just don't have an idea in your head. And in the Devil's Final Offer, which is my last book that I just did, there was that moment where I knew the book had to have a little bit more, but I just didn't have that idea in my head. And you can't force it. You can't force an idea because it won't be a good one. So those are those times where you have to just set the project aside and you have to wait for that idea to come to you, and they will, and they do. It doesn't, whether you're driving down the road or whatever you're doing, all of a sudden it'll hit you and you'll say, "Oh, there it is."
Right.
And you start to develop on that idea. So I guess the key is just to not force it, not just to let those ideas flow naturally.
Okay. So, publishing a book is no small feat. And as we know, they found you because you're amazing. And you are amazing. Okay?
Well, thank you.
Your
Thank you.
titles are wonderful. They're a joy. They're a joy to read. So, what's your biggest aha moment during that process?
Uh, Other than when that first publisher said, "We want this," because I really never expected that to happen. I think the challenges and the aha moments come in marketing. Marketing is very tough, and it's such an uphill battle. You have to find your target audience, especially if you're multi-genre. You have to know where to go in social media. You have to know which author events to go to, and really, you have to also understand that authors events are more for the photo opportunity. They're not really for sales. It's just to get
Right.
yourself out there. So the aha moments for me are when somebody walks up to me during an author's event or an author signing, and not to buy my books, but to say, "I have your books and I love them." That's the aha moments for me.
Yeah.
That reminds us that our books are out there and that people are enjoying them, and
Yeah.
I love that. More than sales could ever make us feel good. Those are the moments that make us feel good when somebody comes up to you and says, "I have your book and I love it. When's the next one coming out?"
Ah, that's a joy. That's a great aha. I love that. So, if one of your books were to be adapted into a movie, who would you dreamcast into one or more of the lead roles?
Oh, sure. My humor series. I had a reader ask me this once,
Oh, good.
and I wasn't kidding. I said, the lead role of my little old ornery lady has got to be Danny DeVito in a dress.
Oh,
It has to be.
yes. I could see it.
That's how I picture that character in my head. And he's such a versatile actor. He is
Yes.
so good, and I could see him taking that and just running with it. And I also can see him playing almost all of the roles.
Oh yeah,
Um, you
absolutely.
know, just
He's
and
so,
so
yeah.
yeah.
He's,
And I mean, if we
oh,
go
that's
back to his old days in Taxi when he got his, all the way up to what he does today and Sunny in Philadelphia. He's the one. He's got to do it.
perfect. So we all love a good story. What's one book, not your own, that you would recommend anyone read?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's for everybody. When I read, I love to read nonfiction. That's my genre,
Hmm.
nonfiction, and I love about. And I don't like to use the word disasters, but I like nautical nonfiction and those type of things. But the book Alive by Pierre Pauls Reed about the 1973 crash of the soccer team in the Andes Mountains. That
Right.
has always been my favorite book. Of course, it's been adapted into movies and into television and documentaries, but the book itself is just amazing.
Okay. Balance is key. And we sort of touched on this a little bit. How do you juggle writing with other responsibilities or interests and family?
There has to be a balance. You have to juggle all of it. You can't, like any other career or profession, you can't let it dominate your life. You can't always bring it home to family. You've got to have that balance of time for yourself, time for your family, time for work. I mean, I still work, and writing is not my primary career still. Um, and I think that's the only way you're going to make a good product is if you designate that certain period of time just to the writing,
Yeah.
and then you walk away from it when it's not time to work on something, um, until an idea comes, and you've got to get that idea down, like we talked about, and develop that idea. But there has to be a delicate balance. You can't just let it dominate your life. You can't be obsessive about it because, again, to me, I'm not going to put out a good product if I can't maintain that balance in my own life.
Fair. Yeah, that's good. So let's dream big. What's next on your creative journey? Any new projects or things you got going on you like to share?
I'm working on my next book right now. It's going to be something a little different. My books, whether it's my humor series, obviously, even in my memoir, I was very satirical, and even in my thriller novels, I have dark humor that the readers have come to enjoy,
Hmm.
or so they tell me. I'm go- I'm going to do another in the horror thriller genre
Ooh.
because they're doing so well.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'm going to
Perfect
do something a
timing.
little. It is
Fall and
perfect time.
Halloween, right?
Well, born on Halloween, so
Yeah, I did read
yeah,
that. Like, what was
yeah.
that like?
Oh my goodness, it was great. It was fun growing up with Halloween being your birthday, and of course I grew up in Bangor, Maine, and that's Stephen King's first home.
This is
Was
his
Bangor, Maine. So
playland. Are you kidding?
it is Playland. I mean, and I was a teenager or in the '80s. So that was the time that his movies were really coming big, and Stephen was big on filming them in Maine. So a lot of my friends worked on the movies, and it just seemed right to do a book of that genre. And really, I was only going to do one. I was going to do one horror book and see if it worked,
Right.
and then I was going to get right away from it if it didn't. And I can't say enough about the fans of that genre. I interact with them all the time, and they are fantastic.
Hmm.
Uh, and the first one that I came out with, which is Last Stop Ground Floor, is a psychological horror. That one within weeks surpassed the sales of anything that I had put out, and that just
Wow.
prompted me to do more. So my next one will be another a little more dark humored, a little more risky, but I also pay attention to my readers and what they say they want from me, along with what I want to do. I mean, a writer has to do what they want to do for it to be a good product. But when I have those fans saying we really want to see more of that, well, I'm going to give them what they want, and I'm happy to because I have an idea in my head of what I want to do. I
It
also
sort of
have had
works really well with the integration of what you're already doing. And then there's like
right.
this, oh, I can kind of one up it. I can one up my game here on this by this amazing suggestion. This is wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm having fun with it. I'm about a quarter of a way through the book. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and the ideas are flowing very well. So yeah,
Yay.
I'm
When can
anxious.
we expect that out?
Oh, it's still going to be a while. It won't be this Halloween, but I just released one anyway, so that's okay.
Perfect, perfect. So let's do a fun bonus question.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay, I like asking this one. So, what's your favorite writing snack or drink, if you have one?
I try. Yeah, I rarely find myself snacking when I'm writing, but coffee is my drink, and not because I'm putting myself to sleep. I have a thing for coffee, and um, I know it. No, I've got to have a cup going. I got to have a cup going.
You don't
So
strike me as boring in the least. I'm sure you're just fine. So, if your life were a book, what would the title be?
oh, that's a tough question because I mean my memoir is called Peanut Butter Memoirs, and of course that title is because of a certain call that I went to one time.
Hmm.
I think I would keep it that because that title has really caught with the readers. It's not something they would expect a memoir to be entitled,
Right.
and they're always saying, what does that mean? What does that mean? I said, well, you got to read the book. I don't want to give it away for you what it
Such a
means.
fun title. I
Um,
love it.
Yeah, and it's funny because again, it has to do with a certain call that I went to one time early in my career. And it's funny because there was one other officer who was with me on that call, and over the years we kind of lost contact with each other because time goes on.
Right.
And he got a hold of me on social media just 2 weeks ago, and he
What?
said he said I bet I'm the only other person without reading the book that knows what that means. And I was so pleased to hear from him. It just made my day. It really
How
did.
lovely. Oh, I love that. So, what are your favorite ways to unwind and have fun?
Oh my goodness, motorcycles. I'm an avid motorcyclist, so the fact that winter's coming, I hate it because I'm going to put the
Oh
bikes away. I know we're up here in Maine. We're going to put the bikes away at some point,
no.
and
It
then
gets
be
cold
depressed.
there.
I know it. Then I get depressed for 5 months because I can't ride the bike. So,
Oh
but that's a great way. I mean, if you just need to get away and do something. I mean, my wife and I we do a lot of canoeing and those type
no.
of things because we do live around 5 lakes. So there's always something outdoorsy for us to do. And there's no better way to unwind just to get away from everything and hop on the bike and feel the wind in your hair and just go.
Perfect. Well, thank you, David, for being here today. Would you like to leave our audience with the details on how they can buy your book and where they can find you? Books,
Absolutely.
rather.
So
Yeah.
I do have a website where readers can go on there. It's a very interactive website. It's www.twoseasons.org. You can order my books there. I personalize them for anybody. I run a lot of giveaways on my website. But other than that, I'm available online through all major retailers, Amazon, all of them. So you just have to either Google the book or my name, and you can find something.
Perfect. Perfect. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. I've had a good time with it.
All right. We'll see you soon, guys. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. For more information, links will be in the description below and also in the show notes on the podcast. If you like this interview, please like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to share this video.